Vice President Bruce. Approval of agenda.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I'd like to add, on 1.5, the NRP, which is that neighborhood revitalization plan.
With Melissa Sexton.
Yeah.
She said 1.5?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I'll second.
All in favor? 6-0. Consent items.
I'll make a motion for consent items. Meeting minutes and 4.25.
Is there a second? All in favor? All opposed? Brad and Sandy opposed. Citizen comments, 3 minutes tonight.
I'll go.
ahead.
Okay, so I decided that trying to get this board to take citizens' concerns seriously and hold anyone accountable for anything is like trying to get corrupt BC politicians to investigate themselves. So I'm done wasting my time with that. But I would like to read a Bible verse. It's been read to you before. It is the famous Esther for such a time as this verse. It was read to you as an encouragement, but only half of the verse was read. So I would like to read the entire verse. This verse is not really an encouragement for you to be proud of the leadership role that you've been put in, as it is a warning. So I'm going to read the whole thing. Esther 4:14. If you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. Yet who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Positions of leadership are never meant to be used for selfish gain or to hide from the troubles that everyone else must face, but rather, one lowers oneself to the position of a servant, hence the title public servant. I hope this verse can be a healthy reminder of the responsibility that comes with your position.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. President, I would like to respond to that.
Go ahead.
I think that you guys do a good job of exemplifying what that verse means. I think you guys have done a great job of stepping up and doing what you need to. I feel like you do take citizens' concerns into account. I feel like with this group, you are constantly under attack, and I probably will be now all over Facebook. I do not care. It just comes with it. Comes with it. We have 2 board members that are here that have been voted to look after the school and the kids and are adamantly trying to destroy it all of the time. And I feel like you guys are doing a great job, and I wouldn't say that you should be applauded because you stepped into this role, you know, knowing what it entailed. But I do get really sick of all the condemnation and the lies. I get sick of reading about it in the paper. I get sick of reading about it on Facebook. And I want you to know that the majority is behind you, and they are not the majority. Thank you for what you do, and continue on.
Thank you, that was touching.
Thank you. Anyone else?
You're welcome.
All right, moving on. Looks like Mr. Cafeller, you're up.
Alright, activities, had that, activities banquet. A little different this year, didn't Jen? Tried to eat while we did it. I don't, kinda sped up the process a little bit. I thought it went well. Track and golf's coming to an end. We just got done hosting the junior JV and varsity match here. League track Thursday at, Equipment, junior high in the morning, high school at night, and then league golf here at Sharon as well Friday. And then regional golf Monday and regional track either Thursday or Friday next week, so. Getting right there towards the end.
Thank you. Sandy, minutes in the packet?
Yes, and I wasn't able to be to the meeting,
Okay.
so if anybody has a question, I can't answer them.
All right.
So,
Bruce, you're up.
Thank you.
College.
It's also shorter when I put mine in there, but I like to do this. We do have some candidates for the president. I think they said there's maybe 6, and they're gonna start interviewing on those. I don't know how many of you know that Ben is leaving and going to work with Fort Hayes as part of economic development. I think he's done an amazing job. It's gonna be hard to fill that position, but they're working hard and hope to have a new person on July 1st. Then we need to hire some additional instructors. We need an additional welding instructor. We need an additional diesel instructor, an additional electrical instructor, and I just talked to Logan Dobbs today, and he said they're looking at 60 kids.
Wow.
coming to that program. Right
Praise
now
the
there's
Lord.
2.
Wow.
Yeah. And diesel about the same, and then they're also maybe adding a carpentry, so huge enrollment up there, some great things going on. Interestingly enough, Terry Dobbs is now subbing. He's getting too old to carpenter.
Oh, wow.
But he's subbing and helping with Joe with his classes, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah.
They are in the process of moving the welding shop. It is so crowded that they were gonna build to get a couple $1 million and build a new building. They don't feel like they can fund that. So they're going to move the welding shop into what was the auto body shop, because it's like 5,000 square feet bigger. They'll need to update that. Then the welding shop will become the power sports building, if they ever find an instructor, and at this point they have not. And if that doesn't work out, they will probably convert it to teach the lineman and the gas distribution, and those programs are still on the threshold to do that. So a lot of changes going on. One of the things I thought was interesting is they're in the Jayhawk conference. I have no idea who all's in it, but they have reinstated a requirement that 25% of the students on their athletic rosters must be Kansas kids. I think that's great, personally. They have the Kansas kids on their rosters, and they kind of waived that for a while, and they decided to go back to do that. Another big partner, the Tech College has partnered with the Goodland Police Department, and they're getting their own fingerprint lab. So
Oh, cool.
when they get that all done, they can process fingerprints in the Goodland Police Department. They don't have to send them off. The tech kids in the police science, whatever they call that, crime scene investigation, they don't have to go somewhere. They can actually physically work in a fingerprint lab, which is another great, I think, happening at the tech school. The legislators cut funding from 1.5 million to $1 million. So they've cut the tech college's funding by about $500,000. And Ben said, we'll take that and we'll be okay with it, because originally they were talking about cutting it to 0. And they reinstated at least $1 million, and that's huge when you're the size that they are up there. So it's happening. One of the things I thought was interesting, Dr. Mason comes on to each of our meetings and gives an update on Fort Hayes. And sign of the times, new things happening, they have decided to quit printing programs for graduation. $15,000 is what it costs to print the programs for graduation. Most of them lay on the chairs when they're done. So they've decided as a money saving that they're gonna quit printing them. You can still get a digital copy. And if you want to have one printed, you can go to the printer there in Hayes, and they'll print you one, but you have to pay for it. And I thought, what a sign of the times that we're away from that paperwork. But $15,000 is quite a bit. The fundraiser, the endowment, brought in $124,000.
Wow.
And they had some donations that said we will match whatever we have to get it to 200. So they got technically $200,000, and then, Hanson will match 50 cents, so they're contributing 100,000. So the Endowment Association is going to get about $300,000 for student scholarships, student success, and things like that, which I think is amazing. They are applying for a $1.7 million grant to add a manufacturing lab to the engineering program. And I know we've taken some kids up there. When I was here before, we took kids, and it's pretty incredible, Mr. Zimmerman. So they're wanting to add some manufacturing to that, which would just be another bonus. And we're working on our second CDL class. We've got 11 who went through, now we're started on 7, and so that continues to grow. That's partnering in the future with Frontier Ag, I think out of Burlington, to train their drivers, and we have some from down here, so that's becoming quite a program. They could just find somebody to help that knows what they're doing, they could really go far. One learning curve, but it's gone really well, so continue to do that. So questions? Great things happening up there.
Yes, they are.
Thank you, Bruce.
Mr. President, I have a question on established rules and orders. Designated recording area. It appears there's recording going on outside of that area.
I called the Attorney General, and it's okay. I just made sure, because last meeting I was questioned, and I thought it was okay,
Okay,
and I called the Attorney General.
moving on. Principal Andrew, you're up.
Okay, well, so as you're all aware, we finished up our year. Graduation I thought went very well, and then all the students checked out last Friday. We still have track, obviously, still going, so my junior high and high school kids, it still seems like they're in school some of the time. One of the areas that I wanted to address with the board is, was brought up at the last meeting, and it has to do with our CTE courses, so I printed off what we offer, what our pathways are, and I just wanted to go through it real quick with you guys. So I did contacted Karen. I would tell you this is, you know, my first year as a principal, and I don't have all the answers for CTE. You know, just to put it lightly, I'm not sure there's more than 3 people in the state that could sit there and be grilled and have all the answers. However, I feel like I can present well enough for what we offer. So the state, when they implemented career and technical education, they put out that all Kansas students would engage in high-quality career paths that prepare them for a lifetime of opportunities as productive and responsible citizens, and that was in 2013. The purpose of career and technical education is to support and empower schools in developing quality pathways that lead students to college and career readiness. As you can see on the sheet that I handed out, our current career pathways for this current school year would be construction and design, health science, and manufacturing. And I also went ahead and put on there the number of students that are enrolled in each of those. I would tell you on the construction, design, and manufacturing, because Mr. Troth and myself only taught one period, that's one class. So, you know, there's 8 kids in my class, and then, 10 kids in the manufacturing pathway. The classes are designed to introduce students to potential career paths, guiding them further along their journey to prepare them for college or secure their future careers. A primary goal of the program also is to establish partnerships with secondary institutions such as Fort Hays Northwest Tech, which we do have. We also, along with Fort Hays Northwest Tech, have a partnership with Colby Community College, and we offer classes through both. The collaboration aligns with the objectives of career and technical education, enabling colleges to collaborate with us to provide comprehensive support for our students. As previously mentioned in other meetings, Mrs. Hammer and I will be meeting with Fort Hays Northwest Tech to outline the structure of our partnership for the upcoming year. And that meeting will take place before our next board meeting, so I plan to present at the next board meeting all the information that I learned from the conversation that we have with Fort Hays Northwest during the June meeting. I know in the community there's been considerable discussion about the junior-senior option, particularly how high schools such as Goodland and Colby implement it. While I'm not saying that's not a possibility for us, I would like the board to note that we're not on the same size or scale as some of these other schools, where they can offer required classes both in the morning and the afternoon, because they have multiple math teachers or multiple science teachers. And without, you know, with our smaller size, implementing similar arrangements would require changes to the entire building schedule, because, you know, for example, my art art teacher, she teaches K-12, it's not just high school art, you know, that she's teaching. And so if I'm rearranging a schedule, so I'm moving, you know, let's say required math to that position, that would change where the art went, well, now I have to move art, which would adjust where elementary, middle school art also falls. So it's an entire schedule, it's not just our high school schedule. That doesn't mean that we want to rule out any options. That is not our goal. Our goal is to, you know, provide the best we can for our students with what we can do. Excuse me. So I just want the board to be aware, when we make, you know, when I'm doing the schedule and stuff, and I have collaboration with some of the faculty and stuff, generally, we're considering the school as a whole, you know, what's best for, you know, the majority of our students. And while we take the individual needs into consideration, that's not usually how you build a schedule. It's, you know, what's best for the whole. We have 135 students in our school, a few more actually. You know, what's best for all of them. And that would be something that I just want you guys to know. And like I said, not ruling any possibilities out. I haven't had a chance to have a conversation with 4 Days Northwest yet. But I would tell you our ultimate goal of all of this is to prepare students for a bright future and to, you know, possibly give them an opportunity, you know, whether it's through going to Fort Hays Northwest or through our online programs, because, you know, right now we offer welding through college credit, we offer math, college algebra, comp, and then through CCC we have students that do independent studies, and that has nothing to do with CTE. That has to do with what they want to do. Because for CTE in our school, if you want to go on a pathway, it has to be in one that has been approved by the state. And so right now, coming up this next year, we have construction design, health science pathway, manufacturing, government, and public service, and then media design and communication. So if that doesn't hit one of those boxes for a student, they can still do independent study and still take college classes when they're a senior and still work towards what they want to do, if that makes sense. And then currently, I would like to also point out that we have 23 students participating in our current pathways. I think that number will definitely go up next year. I would probably put it 90% of the high school will be in it. We had 3 completers this year. To be a completer means they either took 3 classes or did a work study, you know, like out in the field, or they got an industry recognized certification such as, yes, say it loud.
EWS, wasn't it EWS?
Yeah, and then what's that?
Oh,
CNA, which is where we had, our 3 completers were in the health pathway.
Thank you.
So it's important to note that CTE is different than, a path, if you say a kid is in a pathway, they're in a CTE program, and a CTE program is not the same as enrolled in college. So it's important to understand those things. Can they enroll in college and be in a CTE course? Yes. Do they have to enroll in a college course? No. So it's important to understand that CTE doesn't mean you have to be enroll in a college course.
Okay. Superintendent Christie, you're up.
Well, Luke and I spent a lot of time on the phone, and so, we've been meeting and, with his people, and so we're gonna hear from them tonight, but, thank Luke for his patience with me and appreciate their work there, so been working with him and his staff and his team on getting this, Novitus up. I will, okay, guys, so it's up, that'd be great. As far as the school improvement or the KESA, Kansas Educational Systems Foundation, we had our 6-month review with our regional executive. We set goals that, we were able to basically reach by the end of the year, even though we don't have to have our, accomplished by until October. We were able to reach them here in May, and so our regional executive was happy for that. However, she is asking us to look ahead and into next year in the school improvement process, and we were able to work with teachers a little bit on that today as they reflected and wrapped up for the year. Strategic plan, this 9 weeks or this last part of the semester, we worked a lot about building and strengthening relationships with schools and families, and we've had a lot of opportunities to do that. We've had concerts, open house, activities being good, field trips, track meets, golf meets, high school graduation, bike to school day. to name a few. We also had kindergarten visitation day. We had 13 future Wildcats. I know we had a couple that didn't show up, so we're looking at between 13 and 15 right now. We also had Ag Safety Days. The high school was able to go to McCarty Dairy and 21st Century Bean. Really had a lot of good feedback on both of those tours and a lot of actual hands-on experiential learning opportunities, which is also part of the strategic plan. So, we were also, as far as school improvement, we met with Amanda, our ELA consultant, and that was her last meeting with us. We just really hit it out of the park as far as a consultant goes, and really one that really helped us hit some strides in ELA. We're very thankful for what she has done for us. Been a long time, 3 years of doing a lot of work, and staff really connected with her and really made some big strides, and we were able to review data today as well, and we'll continue to do that. Mr. Cordy and I have worked extensively on a grant, the Patterson Family Grant, and that will also involve our CTE programs. We initially sent in a letter of intent. We had to wait to hear back from that, and then it was a pretty short turnaround to actually get the grant in, and so we applied for about $250,000 worth of grants, and we shall see what we get out of that, but we spent a lot of time on that. I want to just thank a lot of people, a lot of community support in the EMS, the fire department, the sheriff's department, and others that have really stepped up and helped us with a lot of trainings and engagements this year, and I really appreciate their support and helping students learn, and it's great to see that come in and work with students, so.
All right, thank you. Moving on to discussion action items, novice proposal, Luke.
Sorry to
You're
jump
up.
the gun there.
You're good.
You're okay.
Hey, thanks for having me back. I know I was here in November. Today I actually brought Bob Miller. He's our senior project engineer that's worked on your guys' project here. I did just notice there was a printing error on that second page, more on the energy savings stuff, not necessarily on the projects. I think Christy printed out a sheet that has something with like blue and white columns on it as well. So if you want to look at that one as well, would be fine. We started this back in January. I was here in November, presented on some stuff, but we came through, done an audit on the facilities, went through engineering specifications, built out different types of projects. As we've discussed with Christy and a few of the board members, this north side of the school district has a lot of HVAC challenges. So what you'll see there is essentially the total base project would be essentially replacing this entire system on the north side, and then also the building controls district-wide. So what you have here is like a thermostat. Those across the whole district come to a computer system. Currently, that computer system has failed, and so nowhere in the district do you have the visibility to change any of those thermostats. So it's a challenge not just on this wing, but also the rest of the district. So currently, that base scope would be replacing a rooftop unit and replacing every unitary box. So it's called a VAV box. So that would total that 1.3 million roughly. And then there would be about $53,000 in annual utility energy savings, and then roughly about $10,000 in annual operating savings. The next line would be a deduct. So, you know, if you said, hey, we only have so much money that we can spend, there's so many things that we got to do as a district. There is an option to keep the existing VAV dampers. What that would be is retrofitting those, so taking out pretty much all the guts in there, trying to clean the damper, and the only thing that would remain is the hot water coil. there is some challenges potentially leaving that. Those hot water coils can pack with dirt over time, and so there could be airflow problems with that. But if you were to say, hey, we wanna go from the 1.3 and consider a deduct, that'd be $127,000 deduct there. Number two, or what you would see on there is a potentially add option 2. So again, on this north wing, it is heated by hot water. You guys currently have a boiler system, and it is 26 years old. So it's a substantial cost to replace it. You could continue on with it, but it is actually what provides all of the heat for this north side. So at some point, there will be a problem with that and fail, but currently wanted to make sure there were some options, depending on what you had from a cash flow standpoint. That would be replacing that with, right now it's an old style boiler with a new condensing high efficiency boilers. It would be something to really consider. The other one that we looked at was adding cooling to the main gym. So that would be removing the existing air handling unit and then adding a rooftop units to the gym, providing an opportunity for cooling in there. You'll see on some of these that has actually negative savings. Obviously, there's a negative impact to the utilities. And then the last thing is we did do an energy audit all the lighting as well. Looked at all the lighting across the district, potentially replacing that to LED. And that has about $12,000 in annual utility savings with an $83,000 cost. So I went through that really quick. Any questions from, I guess, the technical side of like what we've looked at and why some of the things maybe we've even considered?
Some coils, that is, and I don't know whether this is a question for Gene or you guys maybe know, whatever, but I mean, are we having airflow issues right now?
So you want to speak to that, Bob?
We didn't come through and have a test and balance done or anything like that. It's just once you have coils that are in place for, better than 25 years, if they don't get cleaned, they're gonna get impacted with dirt. I think probably more what your issues are is that actual damper that tries to move in there. Those were an interesting design back in the day. They weren't very high quality in terms of long lasting. And so those will tend to stick and get stuck wherever they get stuck. And so I think you can get.
You're talking about the dampener replacing and an actuator that controls the dampener if we rebuilt them.
Correct. So yeah, if we did those.
Or you put them in new, the whole coil and everything. The
Correct.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah, and that would be, so there's really 3 components to that. There's the damper, the actuator with the damper, the coil, and then each one has a hot water valve that runs hot water so it can turn the hot water off and on. And so that valve would be replaced. Really, the coil is the only thing that would stay in place. But, and I guess the downside to that would be at some point if you weren't getting proper airflow, you may have to go replace one off. Right now there's 20 existing boxes, so you could go away from replacing all of those boxes. Keeping that.
And those are the same coils that produce cooling also?
No.
Or is that a different?
No,
that's a different
the
system?
cooling comes from the main unit up on the roof. And then the boxes reheat that to maintain your space temperature.
So we have, coolant, we have another set of coils then somewhere, like an evaporator.
Yeah, so
Is that at the
that's
main
at the main
unit?
That's at
unit. Yeah.
that main large unit on
So
the
it
roof.
sends cold air
Yep.
everywhere?
Yep. And then you reheat it wherever you need,
Depending
or,
on- Okay,
so-
that's
so-
where the temperature control
Yeah.
came from.
and so what the challenge is too on this system is the controls is outdated. And so, one, to the point that those VAV damper actuators have likely failed or landed in a position. So if your boiler's off and you're in a shoulder season per se, your unit's sending 55-degree air. And so then this space will go, hey, I need heating. Well, maybe the valve has failed on this VAV box. Well, then this room's gonna freeze, or one of the rooms is gonna freeze. And so the goal is that system kind of has to work in tandem with one another. That's kind of the challenge with this system on this north wing is it's not like on the south side you have one unit that serves one classroom. And so if that has a problem, you can kind of just say, well, that unit needs to be replaced and fix that. This whole wing works as one system. So that one unit provides all the cooling and that one boiler provides all the heating. And so at some point, if that unit were to go down, you lose all the cooling. Or if the boiler goes down, you lose all the heating on this building. And really just the way that it was set up from the start, there's not an easy way to go away from that without substantial dollars. So keeping it the same system is gonna provide you, kind of reset your system, provide you longevity. But at some point, 25 years, you'll probably be in a similar position to have to reconsider doing a lot of these things again, so.
Okay. The boiler's basically a standalone unit that if we stick with it, it's something that can just come in and be replaced.
It can be, yeah, and I would say, I mean, the challenge with that is like anything, it's gonna fail when it's really, really cold.
Right.
And so you won't have heating on this whole side of the building. So that would be the only challenge with that. Most of those times, they're Scotch Marine boilers. They were built like a brick house, to say the least. And so they do last a long time, but I'm working with Wichita Public Schools, and they have a 20-year-old Scotch Marine that just failed. And so, like, you have gotten to a 25-year point, so it is something just to consider, you know, if you don't replace it now, to start putting a plan together, okay, what's our emergency plan if that were to go down, on those things.
Back to the coil thing, there was a coil that had an issue in the office, all right? I don't know who fixed it, but what was the deal there? Did the coil split, or was this a leak from a hose
Eugene was
supplying the
telling us
coil, or?
I'm unaware of what that is.
So I think,
Okay,
if I remember right, it froze up, so the
Yeah.
boiler was off,
okay.
the coil
So
or the
it
valve was
wasn't-
closed.
It wasn't that the coil failed
Right.
because it was
Yeah.
antique,
No.
it failed because of something else caused it.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
We were trying to fix the situation because we didn't have control. So we were trying to fix the situation and turned it on. It turned it on to the main office and then it wouldn't shut it down, so then it froze.
Okay.
So,
No, that's fine, if that failed because of its age or something, then I was maybe gonna have a
Yeah.
different opinion about the rest of it.
The coils typically, what are they, 50 years, the pipes are?
It can be, it just depends. I mean, if you get 30 out of them, you're doing good. Just cause that copper can, especially in the bends, can kind of wear over time, and that's typically where you'll start springing leaks.
I don't know, what kind of pressures is that running on the water side of that?
Should be somewhere in the 20 to 30 range on the highest.
You have further questions on the scopes and that? So the next, I guess, the last thing, so depending on, whatever decision, you guys make this evening, we are trying to get in a position to get most of this work completed this summer. You guys are already at summer, so the few things that, are a little bit of a challenge, just long lead times, are the main units. If you were to say, hey, replace the VAV boxes, those are typically about a 6-week lead time, so they would be here mid-July. If you were to keep the existing unit and go with the retrofit option, those are generally kind of shelf things that you can get. It'll be more labor on site likely from the cleaning perspective, but there will be people here working all summer from that perspective. And then the last thing would be, you know, once the system is installed, there will be a year-long commissioning process to make sure the system is running and functioning as intended. That, you know, it's not installed and then walk away. I know we had conversations early on that Christy thought maybe this system never worked from day one. So trying to make sure it is functioning and operating over the next year will be a big piece of this, because these systems are somewhat complex in nature, and sometimes they just take a while to get the kinks worked out, but our plan would be to work with you for that, over that entire year to make sure we're leaving you a good system, not just walking away once construction's done, so. That's kind of the overall schedule of this. So.
Any other questions?
So the real the projected energy savings are correct on this sheet.
Yeah, so this one kinda got funky there, but yeah, so really the projected utility savings mostly is coming from your lights. You guys have a pretty high kilowatt hour cost, and so typically when you have that, the lights replacements have a pretty good payback. I think that's just under 7 years. It's actually a really good payback. Those lights would come with a 10-year warranty, so you are out exceeding. So the other ones that you would have savings is the HVAC, and then the O&M is probably the biggest one. That's probably more of a soft cost in some aspects, but I know you guys have spent a lot of money just on keeping these systems up and running. Partially, the challenge has been the building automation system, but that sheet's probably the most accurate. If that negative 6,500 isn't included in there, you're looking just shy of 20,000 in annual utility savings. So, if you were to do LED lighting and really the base project.
And as a general thought, you're thinking this is somewhere in that 25 to 30 year type of a fix?
Yeah, I would say it's similar to the existing
Coil.
system. The dampers and actuators are probably a little bit better. I think generally speaking, over the last several years, the control systems have become more backward compatible. Early generations, they weren't as backward compatible. So you should be able to be in a position also to continue to update the controls as you need, instead of getting to a position where, hey, we need to replace all of it at once. So that would be also an add to that. But yeah, I would say 20, 25 years is really probably as long as you'll get on the next system as well. So I guess if you were to want to take care of like the biggest HVAC challenges, base with option 2 and option 1 would be your kind of best value, least cost. You're taking care of your boiler, you're taking care of all the HVAC system here and that control system. The total on that one is $1,704,899. That does include a $50,000 contingency. The way that's handled is essentially in Dream Construction, if they get in and they say, you know, because we're not replacing all the hot water piping between the boiler and the unit. If they got in and said, hey, there's pinholes coming through this hot water piping, they go, okay, let's price that up and fix it while we're here on site. And then that would be just open book contingency that the project manager would work essentially as you go through that project. And then at the end of it, if you don't use any of it or use just a certain amount of it, that dollar just comes back to the district. So it's really just an option to help make sure the project gets complete. Because there is generally some unforeseen things that you may not know when you're just walking from an engineering perspective.
And if I was over the 50,000 contingency?
I would say typically we're not over that because we have a pretty good idea. I mean, I can't say we've ever went over it on our, what we projected. So typically that's roughly 5% of the job. Typically at the end, what it ends up becoming is, you know, hey, there's $30,000 left. Oh, during the project, an HVAC unit fails down at the other end of the building. You go, hey, can we get that one replaced? That's typically how it ends up. But most of the time, we're pretty good on the engineering side to make sure. But you know, there's certain things that are sometimes unforeseen. An example is a crane punctured a hole in the parking lot, and so they were like, the subsurface of the parking lot wasn't ready, so they came back and fixed the parking lot. A lot of things that we don't, you know, anticipate, but sometimes they're there. So, and that would be a log that we're continuing to check. So it's like every week we're going to do a client meeting, and we're going to say, hey, this is what we saw last week. And typically toward the end of the project, it's like, yeah, we haven't really spent a lot, or you know, week 1 we missed something. Typically we don't miss stuff on those things, very big picture items, but can't say we've ever spent all of the contingency.
Number three's a no-go with me.
Same here. If it was me, I would do the base. And I'd deduct, I would retrofit the boxes. Then I would skip the boiler, I'd skip the gym, and I would do lighting. But that's just my 2 cents. But I do know boiler could happen tomorrow, but.
Is the lighting something we could do on our own though as we go?
Well, I don't know, the only reason I go with lighting is cause it's got, by far it's the only one that pays for itself.
Which is typical, I mean,
It is typical.
HVAC is big capital intense projects, so oftentimes they should, so. And yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of clients say, hey, let's just plan to do the lighting on our own over time when we can, so that's not.
Probably completely different people. Or not
It
necessarily.
doesn't matter, I mean, it's pretty simple.
No, but I'm
It's
saying-
replacing it.
The people in here doing your HVAC, they're not gonna be associated with the lighting.
Correct, yeah, it's a different company, it's electrician, it's,
Yeah, that's just my 2 cents. Yeah. I mean, one reason, well, yeah, like I said, the lights, they kind of pay for themselves, but then you get to see you guys come back and do an audit on an energy audit.
Yeah,
at the
we'll-
end again, right?
yeah, well, what we'll do is start to take your utility bills over the next years and actually make sure that the savings is associated in those, so. So what you said is essentially 1,313,258,000, would be that total cost. And I would just say in that, if you don't do the boilers, just make sure you have a plan of, okay, you know, if there's a substantial failure on that, you know, who are we calling, where's that boiler coming from? Cause you will have struggles on this mean to keep it even above freezing if it's, you know, in the middle of winter. So that would be the biggest challenge on there, but again, those can run forever, but, they can't fail, so. And that number I gave you includes the contingency, sorry.
So, boiler, $475,000. If prices, I guess I don't even know how to ask this, because prices never stay the same. How much savings is there to do that at this time versus doing it a year from now?
So we just did a project at Colby and it was about $150,000 less and it was a little bit larger boilers. So I don't know why the cost has jumped so much just in this last year. I can't say that the same will happen next year, but just in perspective, there is a substantial cost difference just over the last year. But I don't know.
$150,000 in a year.
And that's not, I mean.
That's what the price of the boiler jumped.
Yeah.
So
Because I've been asked that
that's the
question
price of the
too.
boiler. Just how much extra will it be because you're not already here, you're not already doing the work? That's what I'm saying, how much savings is there in having you do it today versus having you do it?
In the middle of winter.
Yeah, not.
Well, in the middle of winter,
Well,
it's
there
gonna
you
be the most
go, yeah.
expensive time, but, I can't give you a figure on that, I don't,
Okay.
I'm just, I guess, looking at last year to this year, actually asked Bob this, I said, why, we just did this a year ago, what's the difference? Part of this, actually, I shouldn't, that's not a direct comparison. They left their old boiler in place and just abandoned it in place, and had space to put new boilers around it.
No.
Yours, you would have to actually demo out,
I got you.
and they're pretty hefty things that you have to move. So maybe that's not exact, or maybe it just jumped 20 grand, but,
Just the labor, so.
yeah.
Yeah, prices have gone up quite a bit.
Yeah.
But you're right, if you were having to do it under like an emergency mode as opposed to a planned out effort, it's gonna cost more. How much more? It's hard to say.
Yeah, your people are already here. I mean, I don't know if it's the same crew, but
That would be, there was 2 mechanical contractors that did this, one at the low, was Tetro.
that bid the whole project or bid the boiler?
Bid the HVAC side of it. Which had 7 controls contractors did it, which is very uncommon for any project, so.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
I've never seen anything like it.
Everybody wanted to come to Sharon Springs.
Of course they do. Well, Wichita's getting ready to bid a bunch of controls, so I think that might have been playing into it a little bit.
Old boilers are no restriction. Our neighborhood.
So Colby still has one that's, their high school was built about the same age as this. Their high school boiler is the same as that one, and they still have it. The one we replaced a year ago was actually a steam boiler. So,
All right, silly question. Are you associated with any of the projects that happened over Oakley schools, Logan County? I was told they went several months this winter with literally no heat in their one building. And still had class. When I say I'm told that, I don't,
Yeah.
it wasn't firsthand, so I'm just curious.
yeah.
And their system's not very old, like, it was something just installed in the last couple of years
Yeah.
and they had some problems that, yeah, anyway, okay.
No, I'm glad I'm not faulty now.
That's what I was gonna say. I think I'm glad you're not too.
So what would be the recovery if there, I mean, new things can fail, what would be the recovery?
So the rooftop unit would have a 5-year warranty on the compressor. So you'd have a 5-year warranty. There's first year's parts and labor. So again, really that first year is typically when things start to fail quickly. You'll see it if it's faulty, but really your first year, and then you have a 5-year parts and labor or compressors on the rooftop units, which provide all your cooling and stuff.
Is there 4 of them again, or is that?
Yes.
There's 4 up there now, right, or 3 at work or whatever,
It's a large unit, yeah.
And the boilers would have a 10-year heat exchanger warranty.
Like, on the unit or parts and labor?
On the unit. So really, actually, that is one thing, so the old boilers, you actually only have one boiler currently. So the new system setups are redundancy, so they're a lot smaller boilers, and so you have generally N plus 1, so you'd have 2 that can serve your facility and an extra one. So typically, they're kind of put in 3s, and so they would be a lot smaller, but then you would have some redundancy, which currently you have no redundancy, you only have one boiler. So.
So is that a little bit how the compressors are on the roof?
Compressors have some redundancy, so if one compressor fails, you typically could lock one out and
Okay.
run other ones.
Like we are now.
And the only time that really hurts you is on the hottest day of the year.
Yeah.
Most of the other days you're fine.
So good. Any other questions?
If that number was less than half, I still don't know if I'd come in. I don't know.
Thoughts on boiler?
I agree with Mark, I have it already out, and my question's on the life, that's a lot of savings. At the same time, we don't know where the loan, interest, all that stuff is, and there'd definitely be something to do, but I'm thinking later, I just crossed it out, so I would go with, the one and the two, in my opinion.
The base with the deduct.
Yep.
Not two, as in you wouldn't go with the boiler.
She's looking at the first one.
Okay.
Sorry,
The base with the one.
Gotcha.
Base with the deduct.
Correct.
Well, do we? Not saying we're done with you, I don't know, but as far as the financing thing goes, I mean, I realize it's our decision, but is that 100%, we just gotta do it, or is that the banks you talked to about the lease purchase? If that's the route we went, like, is that, did they say, yeah, we could do that, or?
Pretty much got to go, they won't commit to a, interest rate yet. I did, depending on, they wanna know what you're gonna spend.
Yeah.
I did, from what I gather from a couple of different people, that I talked to, 10-year purchase lease, and I know some other schools, I don't know how they're getting away, but are doing it a little bit different, but when I talked to KSDE and KSB, they're like, no, it's 10-year purchase lease, so.
I guess what let us have a conversation, same thing at Colby. So when you select a company just through the selection process, there's, within that legislation, it enables you to go past that.
Gotcha.
So, you just need to make sure you express that to them, that you selected a company through
Okay.
that legislation. Because then if you don't, you are limited to that 10-year.
Okay.
You can go out, Colby's went out to 15.
Okay.
And they also are kicked interest. So, and, it doesn't change the overall cost, it just can maybe
Yeah, but it does
minimize your
spread it
annual
out.
payment, can help that, so from a cash flow perspective over time, there's opportunity there.
So if you go to 15, then basically is what
Well,
you
you-
said, if you do,
You can actually go to 30, it's very hard to place it, some banks won't place it, just cause it is minimal risk with the public entity, but 15 is really common, I've seen several go up to 20, if they got a ton of projects that, they don't have reached the cash to do. That typically is like roofs, things that don't have much energy savings, but 15 is a really common number that I see projects finance that all the time. I guess the other thing too is if you select a smaller project, what we can do too is, if you get in a position where it's, hey, maybe we do wanna consider the boiler, we can come back and reprice that too and say, hey, let's add this. That actually happened I keep going back to Goldie and it's right your area. We had 3 chillers priced on their last project. Same thing, it's tough decision, they go, hey, we're gonna do this one, it's giving us the most problems. At the end of the summer, that other chiller actually failed. And so they said, hey, can we do that project now? Repriced it, and then essentially they were able to actually they refinanced right away, got a better rate, and actually just were able to pay a part of the project and not have to dip into more cash. So there's potentially that option too. If you said, hey, we're not gonna do the boiler now, if you start going through this year, you see their problems, there could be an opportunity to come back to reprice it. We would have to reprice it at that time, but you don't know if that would change or not.
I kinda think you